Kenya's opposition leader Raila Odinga has called off protests planned for today to allow for bipartisan discussions on the formation of the country's electoral commission. Mr. Odinga made the decision soon after President William Ruto asked him to halt the demonstrations to allow for dialogue. The opposition has been protesting twice a week against the cost of living, the formation of a new electoral commission, and questioning the president's election last year. President Ruto has agreed to one demand and proposed a bipartisan engagement in Parliament on the reconstitution of the Electoral Commission. Well, for more of this, let's cross live to Nairobi and speak with Arise East Africa correspondent Mark Bichachi. Good to see you, Mark. Tell us more about this dialogue between the camps of the opposition leader Raila Odinga and President Ruto. How significant is it?
Well, it's quite significant in the sense that the demonstrations had previously made life quite difficult within the city. Many, as you know, many people had lost property. There was a lot of even more violence expected this Monday. So it has brought a sigh of relief to the greater country in terms of people feeling it is much safer. However, given that President Ruto only accepted to one of the demands, many Kenyans are asking themselves, what about the standard of living? What about the cost of living? What about the promises that President Ruto had made before office? And of course, this then brings the question that is Raila Odinga once again making a deal that is more selfish than it is for his support base who are suffering under the weight of a high cost of living.
Yeah, that's a good point you raised there. And Mr. Odinga has referred to Mr. Ruto's decision to reverse his approach to the protests as a climb down. Is that how ordinary Kenyans see it?
Oh, yes, indeed. The hard stance that had previously been held both by the president and his deputy has toned down. The letter of the spirit and the letter of what he wrote in terms of seeking dialogue, even called Raila his friend. So there has been a huge climb down in terms of the previous stance from the government towards the protesters and towards Right Honorable Odinga. Now, this climb down, many speculate that because the letter and the calling off of the demonstrations happened so quickly, many are claiming that William Ruto and Raila Odinga have made a deal already. It is just a matter of making what the deal is public, if at all it will be public.
Well, again, that's a very interesting point you make, because I wanted to ask you, where do things stand at the moment with those talks? Whether anything's been agreed, any demands that perhaps, met perhaps in talks before the talks?
Well, the thing is, we all suspect that there were talks before the talks, but we have no idea about what a kind of deal was reached. We know for a fact that, yes, the president did keep away his hardliners. They have not been speaking. We know that Raila Odinga also has kept away his hardliners. Now, the details of what they agreed is what we don't know about. They have remained tight-lipped, and we quite don't know exactly what the country is to expect. But we know that the demonstrations being put aside has brought decrease in tension, because I can assure you, if these demonstrations were going to continue, then it would have descended into an issue where we are demonstrating because we are angry at the government and the issues have long been forgotten.
And Mark, in addition to criticizing the government's handling of the cost of living crisis, Mr. Odinga is still rather insistently rejecting the outcome of last year's election. What is he hoping might happen with that?
Well, that is the golden question, isn't it? Because he's deciding not to hold rallies, especially given that publicly only one of his demands has been met, and the other, of course, being that he had asked for dialogue. Those two have been met. With the other issues not being dealt with, we remain in limbo as to what exactly he's going to say. Remember, he has not only decried the results of the previous election, but also previously stated that he refuses to recognize the presidency of William Ruto. But there are speculations that this is not even a question of Dr. Ruto, and Mr. Odinga clamping down. This is also a question of the international community not giving them a choice and forcing them to actually sit down and talk and work together, because there was a flurry of diplomatic forays into the country. Even Senator Kun being hinted as to have brokered this particular deal. So it could also be that it is no longer about the issues they were talking about, but about two gentlemen forced to sit down and discuss and agree about the future of this country called Kenya.
Jolly good to talk with you, Mark. We're all the wiser for it. Mark Bichachi is a Rise East Africa correspondent, and he was talking to me there from Nairobi.